Hello, everyone. Today we'll conclude this chapter with learning about the reason for the Ketoret. I don't think we talked about this in the past, but I'll just give two general ideas about the Ketoret. The first one is that when the blessing that we make on Motzei Shabbat about smelling a good fragrance, the blessing is Borenu V'Samim, and that was only in the Gemara and Brachos. So it was way after the temple was destroyed, and so if somebody actually did smell the Ketoret, they would not be making this blessing. And the second thing is that the Torah specifically says in Parashat Kitisa, chapter 30, Exodus 30, verse 38, that the person who does like this, meaning the same format of the Ketoret, of the incense, in order to smell from it and then does, the punishment is karet. This is the death, an untimely death by Hashem. That's how we understand it. And we don't know if somebody did or didn't ever do that. But the Sefer HaChinuch very clearly says that it has to be both parts, meaning that you have to make it in order to smell it and then smell it. But if somebody else made it and you smelled it, or the opposite, you made it but didn't smell it, there isn't that punishment of karet. The reason I think we should note those two ideas is that the Ketoret was a very secretive operation, as opposed to the Olah and the other sacrifice we did. It was outside in the courtyard. The on Yom Kippur is very close to what this is, and this week we reach Mini, so it's even more important to know that when Nadav and Avihu brought the Esh Zarad, foreign fire that Hashem did not command them, they were carrying a pan with the incense, and they were going to burn it inside, and it actually became part of the service of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, but some of those laws were not written before Nadav and Avihu did it. That's why we were all perplexed why they died, because we don't know exactly how far they went and what the reason for them doing that is. So let's learn a little bit more about the Ketoret. So just as the Tamid offering was brought daily, the Ketoret incense was also brought every day, half in the morning and half in the afternoon. So the Talmud describes that they made 368 portions, one for each day of the solar year, which they divided into half in the morning and half in the late afternoon. And the extra three were to be reground to make it even what's called the kamin of the kaf, a finer grinding, in order to bring on the altar on Yom Kippur by the Kohen Gadol, because they would take more than the regular portion. And in Kelohenu, according to some minhagim, we actually described that whatever was left over, eventually over the years, from those 368 portions, amounted either to a third or a quarter of the amount needed. But they were commanded to make every year the same exact amount. I'm not sure if they were allowed to use that Ketoret for the temple or not, but for sure not for personal use. So all of these things are a little bit perplexing, and Rabbi Melamed is going to explain a little bit more. So the Quran Tamid expresses Israel's connection to Hashem and the bond that all worldly creations have to their source of life. Therefore, its organs were offered on the exterior altar, visible to all. That's the visibility that I said. However, the Ketoret gives expression to the deep inner connection between Israel and Hashem, and therefore it was offered on the interior altar inside the temple on Mizbeach HaZahav. And he explains a little bit more. The Tamid offering connects all creations in their material and tangible components to Hashem. For that reason, the essence of the offering was the blood thrown on the altar and the organs offered upon it. The Korban Ketoret, on the other hand, is the quintessential spiritual offering, epitomized by the incomparably pleasing scent that emanates from the spices of the incense. So we all know about the five senses. There's a beautiful Zohar It says that in the Garden of Eden, the only sense that wasn't used for the sin of eating the fruit was the smell, the sense of smell, and that's why on Motzei Shabbat, because we lose that extra neshama that we have, we say the blessing on the smell. The other thing is that, as far as I know, today we cannot sin with our nose. In the time of the temple, you could sin by smelling the ketoret, like we said. You can sin by smelling the offering that was brought to a pagan idol. You could sin with all kinds of stuff like that that are related to smell. But today we only have good deeds that we can do as smell, like smelling the etrog, smelling the B'sayim on Motzei Shabbat, and other things that we can do with our smell. And so it definitely is a lot holier. And the Talmud concludes, Ezehu Eval Shaneshama Nenet Mimeno. I think that's the wording, that which organ of ours is directly related to the spirit, and the answer was the nose, because like I said, we can only do positive things today with our nose, and that's according to the Torah. Through the Ketoret, a sublime spiritual light appears in the world, which illuminates the inner souls of all creations and connects everything to holiness. Therefore, it was made out of spices that exude a pleasant scent, for smell is the most refined and spiritual pleasure there is in the world. The scent extends in all directions to hint that all creations are influenced by an inner spiritual illumination that elevates them and binds them to holiness. So this sounds very, very high up, but the next paragraph will explain why it's so important to understand this component. So just as an introduction, there were 11 spices in the Ketoret, all grounded throughout thoroughly together so that they would be united completely, producing a favorable scent. Similarly, by unifying all powers completely for the sake of holiness, the world is uplifted and repaired. So even if somebody is doing something that to us looks like they're doing something wrong or against halacha, maybe they have a reason to do it in order to bring somebody closer, or they're just pretending. And like, I'll just give a very quick story about Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi had often met with Elijah, the prophet, and one day he asked him to show him his neighbors in heaven when he dies. And Elijah looks around and says, they're not here yet. And then a few minutes later, he says, there they are. Those two men are your neighbors in heaven. And he went over to them and said, what do you do? And they said, nothing special. And he says, you're dressed like Roman guards in jail. And he said, yeah, that's exactly what we do. But we don't usually talk to people as esteemed as you. And he says, please, I need to know what you do that merits you to be next to me in heaven. And they said that when they realize that a Jewish girl is brought in and they're going to abuse her, they put either red paint or something similar on their dresses to allude that they're menstruating, and that way they save them from that abuse. And so then Rabbi Yoshua responds with an even greater sentence. He says, I understand now why you're my neighbors in heaven. I don't understand why I'm your neighbor. Like, he basically said that you're even greater than me. So on this note, on this story, Rav Melamed concludes with a very beautiful teaching. One of the primary spices in the incense is the Chelbenah, or the Galvanum, which alludes to the sinners of Israel, who in their roots are equally connected to the sanctity of Israel. The reason why they're saying it like that is because the Chelbenah has a particularly foul aroma. Okay, so however, blended with the special mixture of the Ketoret, its odor would transform to good. And so even when we are teachers and we have a bad student, question is this student going to influence the majority who are very good, or is the majority, because they're so good, going to be able to influence this student? And according to the Torah, according to this idea of the Chelbenah, instead of ruining the fragrance of the Ketoret, the addition of the Chelbenah would make the smell of a Ketort even more praiseworthy, even more powerful. This comes to teach us that when all the forces of Israel unite for the sake of the sanctified goal, the inner merit of the sinners of Israel is revealed, and they too join to aid in the rectification of the Jewish nation and the world. So that's the perfect way to do Tikkun Olam. And if you remember, when we learned with Benedict, we talked about how a Ta'anit Tzibur, a public fast, can't be accepted by Hashem unless there are people there who are known as Jews who don't keep the Torah. And so that's exactly what the Torah is and symbolizes, and it's an amazing teaching for this week.